Welcome to the Eves podcast, the Eavesdrop. This is our lovely podcast, a platform where we aim to educate, inspire, and share knowledge and ideas. Please introduce yourself to our viewers.
Thank you very much, Lucky, for having me. And I feel very honored to be part of this very fantastic form of communicating to the community and to the world. I think it's such a brilliant initiative, and I feel once again honored to be a part of it. My name is Musa Aminu. I would like to think of myself as somebody who's very passionate about community-based work, especially around substance use disorder. This has involved over time developing programs, working with advocacy groups, and even setting up my own consultancy to be able to guide community-based organizations in terms of how they think about treatment, how they think about programs that are basically trying to attend to the problem of drug use disorder in most communities. I currently am doing some work with my research around cannabis use and cannabis use disorder. So my passion essentially is around programs, while I also have a background in neuroscience of addiction.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Exciting stuff. See, you are a very hard man to find, Aminu. I know that talking to you today, we'd actually find out that by no later than tomorrow, you are somewhere in UK and all that doing these researches. And so it's quite an honor for us to have you here. Last week, the mother and Sia with Shorts spoke about the issue of drugs and the program relating to this topic, or rather the pandemic, the drug issue. And coming from Mission Vale, this is really a pandemic in our community. And working with the young people, we see people that come down with the drug issue. And I'd love to just brag a little to our viewers that this is actually the man that has given us the exciting programs that we're running with schools and churches as well with regards to drug-related problems and things. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you very much.
Lovely.
For the honor and for the privilege I've had with, I like to think of it as a privilege to have had an environment to be able to bring some of the ideas, some of the skills, the knowledge that I've been able to acquire over time to life. Because it's one thing to have this knowledge, it's another thing to have an environment where the value of this knowledge or skills can take life. So I think the opportunity to do the work we have been doing with the Mission Vale Care Center has been remarkable, even for me, because it's also an opportunity for me to see truly, do these types of programs work? And here we do have an opportunity to be able to test the waters in that sense. And the feedback has been that since the programs with the implementation from the side of the team of on the Mission Vale Care Center team side, that these programs are being rolled out in the communities at the level of schools, churches, and the feedback has been very encouraging. So thank you to the team as well for taking it up a notch.
Yeah. And I think the passion comes from the fact that we can relate, both as the facilitators, the people that are on the recovery journey that we are working with, and the community as well, the stakeholders and the partners. Everyone seems to relate to this drug issue and drug-related problems. Now, let's get into the business of it. What is drugs from your experience with the topic and researches and the perspective that you're in? What is drug according to Aminu?
I like how you put it to the fact that it should be according to me, because most of the things or everything I would say here on this platform is a function of my own personal opinion. I like to stand behind what I think, while that opinion is going to be objectively guided by what is also established and acceptable, hopefully on a global scale, but it is my personal opinion. So for me, what I've understood drugs to be over time is any substance that could have been something that you previously used to think of as even food or something else, but a substance that has the potential to change the way the brain works
Yeah.
and affect the way we think, affect the way we feel, and has also the potential to change the way the brain does the normal functions it
Yeah.
does. So even if it's something that has been previously considered to be something else, but if it does have the potential to affect the brain and the central nervous system that basically regulates a significant amount of most of the activities of the body, or nearly all of the
Yeah.
activities of the body, then I like to think of that substance as a drug.
Thank you so much. Makes sense. Now, another follow-up question then would be, who is okay? What, when does a person then get to be classified, for lack of a better word, as a user, or how we would rudely put it, and I'm saying rudely because I've been workshopped on this by this great man, an addict? When does the drug now become an addiction, speaking sense to the dependency factor?
Okay, I like the fact that you are using these terminologies interchangeably.
Yeah.
That's the word addiction and dependency. So globally, the acceptable terms as we are all moving towards correctness in terms of our language, and
Yeah.
we do understand the power of language in terms of how it can breed a culture of stigmatization,
Yeah.
and we have also understood that stigmatization alongside other factors can be a big barrier in terms of how people are able to access help for different problems, even in the case of drugs. So yes, the acceptable term has become a dependency syndrome or substance use disorder,
Okay.
while the same context is attributed in addiction. So, what for me makes a distinction between someone who's using drugs and someone who comes down with a dependency syndrome or a substance use disorder is the manifestation of what is referred to as uh, maladaptive behavioral phenotypes. And I'll
Okay.
say it in a simpler way to say that the expression of the symptom of uh, dependency is usually in the behavior of the person, because
Okay.
drugs affect the brain, as I mentioned, or the activity of the drugs is basically in the brain. And in psychoactive drugs, maybe I need to be more specific, which are the drugs that people end up being dependent on.
Yeah.
They affect the brain in ways that the expression of those changes are in the behavior of the person. So imagine someone who used to prioritize maybe going to school or coming to work early, and all of a sudden they begin to take coming to work early for granted, or not thinking that it is crucial for them to be part of the church group that they
Yeah.
used to be part of. So there's a prioritization of the substance over the things that used to be important to the person. And while the diagnostic statistical manual, that's kind of the authority that basically puts out a guideline to say these are like a set of criteria that one has to satisfy before you say they are coming down with a use disorder rather than a use, has these criteria. One will also have to satisfy a good number of the items on that list for you to say assertively that they have come down with the problem.
Yeah. And so one of the apparent, I think, traits that we see around our community and in the groups that we work with amongst the young people is people are definitely using. Some would come in high. And those candidates have, most of them, admitted that they do use a certain form of drug, right? And even having undergone our programs and things, we find that many of them can't stay throughout the course of us working together with them towards rehabilitating them and them having to recover on the drug thing. And what we would then notice is the minute they relapse, they come back in a far more worse state than where they used to be. And one of the common thing is the loss of their senses, consciousness, and they would just be mentally disturbed. Why do you think that is?
I think this is really an interesting observation you have made. It is also not far from what I have seen in many clinical cases, and also the principles that have been attributed to what relapse looks like
Yeah.
um, after an individual has taken some time off from drugs and goes back. I would like to use an analogy where they say, like, there's a resting potential a body has.
Okay.
Like, imagine um, um, a ball rolling down a slope and you use something to wedge it,
Okay.
right? It was coming at a certain speed with a certain force, and now you stopped it abruptly. Now, the fact that that body is in a resting state does not mean that it lacks um, any sort of force in itself. And it somehow, in that rest state, continues to gather some sort of momentum,
Yeah.
such that when you take away the wedge, the speed at which it will roll down might even be with a force that is greater than what it was coming
Yeah.
with before you put the wedge. Maybe this sounds a little bit complicated. What I'm trying to say here is this, that usually when people relapse, um, it's as you know, that relapse is often attributed to a lot of things. Sometimes the quality of the treatment the person receives.
Yeah.
Other times it's also the person's inability to manage the very debilitating withdrawal symptoms associated with the use of a particular drug, or a crisis situation in the social context of the person's life, or many other reasons. Um, but my interpretation of this exaggeration of the disorder after the person has gone
Yeah.
clean and now has come back to use again will be that sometimes it's the guilt that comes from saying I have failed. It's also the shame that comes with thinking that, oh look, I made a decision to go clean. Everybody has been counting on me to maintain
Yeah.
this decision, but now all of a sudden I've fallen off and have become a laughing stock.
Yeah.
Not only that, but I'm also disappointed in myself, and I would rather drown that in the things that help me to forget this type of shame and sorrow. So that's one way to look at it, but you can also look at it from many other angles, like in the clinical context, where if the quality of treatment is not effective and people only go into treatment and the option or the modality was such that detoxification was the only thing they were able to achieve in treatment, then the behavior I mentioned earlier that is deformed has not had enough time to be re-engineered into proper or more acceptable character.
Yeah.
So the problem never left. The problem never left, but in this case, there's also shame and guilt, and the person just wants to drown all of that away when they go back into using again.
And before we get into whether or not there's an immediate solution to the drug problem that we are facing, and that seems to be a stumbling block towards people breaking out of poverty and out of their miseries. I want to ask, in your previous workshops with us, you mentioned the 5 cycles of change, which I'm again proud to mention. The pre-contemplation, contemplation, action and maintenance, and the last step would be the relapse stage, right? And in the cycle of change that we are conducting, and these workshops that we are conducting, be it at the church or high school or primary school level, and even in our programs here, one that seems to, be much and well received is the last step, the relapse step, where the candidates or the people that are using seems validated, seems given grace and approved, acknowledged in a sense, right, that they are trying. And I remember sometime last year, you said that relapse is one of the most important stages in the cycle of change. Why is relapse the most important, because to us it seems like a failing stage, like we tried everything. Bruh, we have been here. We thought you are right now. Really? Did you really have to go back? Why is that?
I think that's a very valid question. My response to that would be that, you know, when you look at the definition of a substance use disorder or addiction, as most people like to refer to it as, by the World Health Organization,
Yeah.
is defined as a compulsive drug seeking behavior
Yeah.
or a brain disease that is characterized by compulsive seeking and use of a drug. And one of the hallmarks of this uh, definition is that the disease is relapsing in nature. And if you look at it that way, and
Okay.
when you speak about for someone who is struggling with this disorder, thinking or feeling a sense of validation, not
Yeah.
necessarily validation, but feeling like they are seen, you know, it speaks to the internal struggle that these individuals have,
Yeah.
that they have in their own accord, within the range of their own will, power, within the range of their own resources,
Yeah.
they have somehow made commitments to themselves and sometimes to even significant others in their lives that they want to turn their lives around or they want to kick this habit. But for some reason that they can't fully comprehend, they can't fully understand, they find themselves going back to using. So that in itself is a symptom that characterizes this disorder. So relapse, while we see it in the cycle of change as a very important step, but in the context of the disease, relapse is a very significant hallmark that describes the symptoms that you not you personally, but I mean,
I got you.
a
Yeah.
person is coming down with this disorder. And I think for the society, for the community, when we begin to appreciate this understanding at this level, is an opportunity for us to begin to extend the grace that is very much needed to accommodate or give second chances to people
Yeah.
who have personally or to the hearing of others or in their actions made a commitment to turn their lives around or made commitments to kick this habit, but somehow find themselves going back to using. And when we have that kind of understanding and appreciation of these concepts,
Yeah.
then it becomes easier for us to extend another hand for them to climb back up on this journey again.
Thank you so much, Aminu, for that. And so I always see Mission Vale as a location for wealth where experience and resources are concerned, right? So I mean, we have people in our communities that have been regarded as successful and wealthy. However, talking to you now, you'd find them sitting in the street corners next to a shop somewhere or at a shebeen, right, drinking themselves to, I don't know, to death. You know, you find them in what we call e-base, smoking with the young ones, right? These are people, some of them are dropouts in varsity or university level. We've seen business owners I know at a recent event that I spoke at, I was told that one of the people that were an audience there, that was an audience that day, was a nurse at a private institution, right? And at the day that I spoke there, she had just gotten her dose of methadone, which is a treatment for heroin in a sense. And that left me with a question, Aminu. Are we all as human, be it the people that are recovering or those that have never used drugs before, immune to drugs in any way? Who is immune and who is not?
I think that is a very interesting topic. I wish we had all day to unpack this, but
Yeah,
I'm going to try to keep it as concise
please.
as possible.
Yeah,
Um, I don't think anybody's immune to addiction, as
yeah,
it is popularly referred to as. I think drugs do not respect anyone, irrespective of your age,
yeah,
your race, your gender, your class. It's also interesting because what we see as a community is often the people who we like to think of as downtrodden, being associated with drug-related problems.
Yeah.
But what we also do not get to have many conversations about is that the only reason why you are seeing this very visibly, palpably in the community is because of the choice of drugs they're using. Now, chances are high that you may not see someone who uses cocaine.
Yeah.
Because cocaine belongs in a class where people have to have certain socioeconomic means to afford it, which means that when people begin to come down with problems associated with cocaine, you may not see them because they are in that class
Yeah.
struggling with it. So it's the same thing across the spectrum of these range of psychoactive drugs that hold the same potential. I say this to reiterate the point about drugs not respecting anybody. They can do the same thing they do to the man that you see in the streets from using Daha or
Yeah.
Nyaope or whatever else that you think is often associated with the drug use problems that we see in our community, as it would to anybody, an executive in a very serious, from a serious organization, a CEO, whatever, irrespective of their class, irrespective of their status in church, across different facets of life. So it really doesn't respect anyone. It can do the same exact thing it does to someone who's poor, someone who is marginalized, and someone who you like to think of in any way you think
Yeah.
that puts people in different conversations.
And I think this is why we have the Eavesdrop and running the programs that we're running at the center, so that we echo that message and that quality information and kind of educate the society. Because I feel that we are less educated and aware of the drug issue and the drug problem and where this whole pandemic stems from. Which leads me to my next question. Not to put you in trouble, Aminu. Really,
Then don't put me in
not,
trouble.
not to put you on the spot here, but I'd love to get your thoughts on what does the legalization of cannabis mean for not only South Africa, but for the world? What does this mean for our community? What does it mean for the next generation, the young ones, the people that are using and those that have never used? What does the legalization of the cannabis specifically mean?
I mean, I guess legalization of cannabis or policies that speak to the legalization of cannabis means different things to different people,
Okay.
including different environments. It probably means something entirely different for the North African countries,
Yep.
not North American countries, sorry, I meant to say, as it would mean to Africa, for example.
Yeah.
My personal thoughts about this subject, which has become a subject of debate in many rooms, in many
Yeah.
conversations. In some rooms, I also participate in this kinds of debates or these kinds of conversations. Is that we really need to think about what the data is saying. That in many cases where people come down with a substance use disorder and they are checked into a treatment program, when you screen, you do a preliminary screening to assess the range of drugs they have been exposed to.
Yeah.
Very often, if it's a case of polydrug use, which means multiple drugs being used by these individuals or by the individual, chances are high that you would find cannabis as the primary drug or the secondary drug. And if you push further, you might see, when you use tools like the Addiction Severity Index that was developed
Yeah.
by the World Health Organization, or ASSIST, you will see that cannabis, in a lot of cases, is the drug of initiation into that polydrug use.
Yeah.
So that is saying a lot for us here in Africa, that often people may not come down with problems directly associated with cannabis, because the data says not everybody who uses cannabis comes down with problems.
With the
but
problem.
people who use multiple drugs very often use cannabis, and the data is also showing that sometimes cannabis is the drug
Yeah.
of entry into that polydrug use. So when you think about that, And you think about the fragile healthcare infrastructures that we are already dealing with as a continent. I said I'm speaking
Yeah.
to what it means to Africa, because I can only speak in that context. I don't know, the Americans can speak
Yeah.
to what cannabis legalization means for them.
For them.
The entrepreneur can speak to what cannabis legalization means to them.
Yeah.
The farmer can speak to what they think cannabis legalization means to them. But for me, who is passionate about responding to this problem at the level of the community, and seeing exactly what is happening at the grassroots level, seeing that people go into treatment, and very often cannabis is in the conversation of why and how they ended up in treatment, then my thinking around legalization is a little bit different, that we must bring in all the facts together, that we still have very insufficient data to speak to how cannabis can be completely harnessed for medicinal purposes or for recreational purposes. But more so, as someone who has insight into the biology of substance use disorder, I understand that you have a group of individuals who are genetically wired in a way that they respond or receive drugs very differently. This is not any different for even cannabis. That they respond to cannabis, let's say it this way, they may be allergic to cannabis. That you might find some individuals who would just be fine with using cannabis recreationally, but some other individuals would come down with problems when they use cannabis. So we need to be able to have that conversation, to be cognizant of all the facts and all the different directions that are being pulled when you bring you bring policies like that. Do we have the information that is needed to continue in these types of conversations? Who's benefiting from these types of efforts, and what is the risk and the benefit ratio looking like? Is it scaling up nicely, and do we really have people who come down with problems that somehow in the conversation you find cannabis being mentioned? And if that's the case, how do we then work with these policies to ensure that we identify these individuals, and when we talk about how they get exposed to the substance, what happens, when they do come down with problems? Do we have the resources? Do we have the infrastructure?
Yeah.
Do we have the infrastructure to accommodate that kind of problem? And do we want to be expending more resources in that conversation if the risk and benefit ratio is such that we could be doing other things with already strained resources in an African context, So this is kind of the thinking. I'm still processing my own thoughts about it, so please, just in case I'm all over the place.
No, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, I think in the few minutes that we have, so we do a lot of job placement with our young candidates here at the center, the people that we work with in our different programs, and from the Missionville community and the surrounding communities as well. And I've seen, together with my team, people losing job opportunities that could have transformed their homes and their lives as well, simply because they smoked dacha at work, totally ignoring the company's policies against the legalization of cannabis. And we work with school as well, and every time we go out to schools to do drug education for children in school, the teachers would complain that the children are smoking cannabis and dacha and all these. And when we interview the students or the learners, the response is always the fact that it's legal. So it does land us at a problem. Now, when we run these drug education awarenesses and campaigns at schools and in churches, together with our stakeholders as well, where we actually get stuck is there a cure or an immediate action that parents, brothers and sisters of the individuals that are down with the drug problem can do to actually help their loved ones recover from the drug issue? Is there maybe immediate aid that people can help, because the rehabilitation centers are full and people have limited access to the medical or treatment that is. What can we do? A person staying here in Missionville, us as the Missionville Care Center, the mother of that actual young boy or girl that's doing drug, or a husband or a wife, what can we do? Sorry to ask you for immediate solutions there, my brother.
I don't think I will have the immediate solution. What
Yeah,
I can prefer is my suggestions and my recommendations, and what is also out there, what has been established by the global organizations that have worked as authorities, like
yeah,
the World Health Organization or the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, what has been researched and has been considered to be effective. So, first off, is what can the parents or the immediate individuals who are dealing with the problem do about the problem? I like to think, what they say. I don't know if it's an African saying or it's just a general saying where they say prevention is better
better
than
than
cure,
cure.
But I grew up knowing this while it's a very
Yeah,
simple phrase, it holds a lot of wisdom in it. That even before we allow this to become a problem, what are we doing to ensure that our young people are growing in an enabling environment, in an environment where they are empowered to be able to make healthy decisions. So when you look at the situation from that angle, that um, while there are solutions to when the problem develops, often the solutions come at literally an expense. But what can we do to ensure that this doesn't become a problem, you
yeah,
know? And I think in that sense, even the parenting style, equipping children to have these life skills that allow them to make informed decisions in healthy ways can be very effective prevention strategies. But when they do come down with problems, especially in environments or in settings where resources are very limited,
yeah,
I think what communities or families can really benefit from is looking out for programs that are not capital intensive, like what we've been trying to work
yeah,
with the Missionville, like creating or in the capacity of a center like Missionville Care Center, that you create a safe space where people who have shared experiences come in and work with things like the 12 steps or the Alcoholic or Narcotics Anonymous
yeah,
to be guided towards this place where there's a removal of this character issues, and also coming to a place where people, or giving people an opportunity in that process, um, giving people an opportunity to be able to turn their lives around through the power that that kind of safe space or community holds. So the 12 steps for me is something the Missionville can think about as a structural way of addressing the problem. And for the family, I think we do not need to wait for our children or our loved ones to come down with problems. We need to start thinking about the style of our parenting. We need to start thinking about how to equip these young people with lifestyle skills. And when they do come down with problems, unfortunately, it's not a problem that you can pray over. You have to consider looking for help.
yeah,
But it is also vital that the family has access to information about where to find help, the treatment options that are available, which I think is something we really struggle with, that people do not know that, for example, the 12 steps is an effective way of addressing this problem.
yeah.
Or people do not know that the medication assisted treatment is a way of addressing
Yeah.
the problem of drugs as such. So there needs to be a lot of sensitization around what is out there as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aminu. And I think man, I wish we had more time to discuss this. But the last question then I have is, how do individuals, families, organizations like your Missionville Care Center and our business partners or companies that employs from communities create an inviting space for people that are down with the problem, the drug problem, so that there's support and making sure that we journey together with them towards recovery, how do we create that space, an inviting space that is a safe space?
I mean, it's simple for me that first off, the invitation has to be non-judgmental.
Yeah.
It has to be inclusive. It has to be cognizant that these are people coming from a broken place, and there needs to be that kind of bandwidth when it comes to the grace you're willing to extend to these people, while at the same time maintaining accountability structures, because it's not like, oh look, we have access to you have access to this space, to the resources it has, and you can do as you wish. Of course you have your rules, your regulations, your guidelines of how people must operate when they are within a system, and individuals like this must not be exempted from these structures, because it will also interest you to know that one of the big problems that people who struggle with drugs have is their inability to structure their world, structure their time. So, coming into a system or an organization that has that type of structuring, first off, gives them an opportunity to begin to model their deformed character in a way that allows it to form into something that, when consolidated, becomes the discipline they need to maintain their sobriety. That's one. And or two, because I talked about making sure that the environment or the invitation is non-judgmental,
Yeah.
and also ensuring that you do not exempt them from the structure of the organization, while showing the necessary compassion that is required for individuals like that to feel welcome, to feel like they can find that safety, to find that community that an organization like that is like this is trying to provide.
Aminu, thank you so much, Makai, for the work that you're doing, man. You're really much loved and appreciated by us as the Missionville Care Center, and I think the Missionville community as well. To our viewers, please do like, follow, and share, subscribe, and thank you so much for the support. Thanks, man.
Okay, cheers.
Till next.